and I suppose previous days as well. For context, with forensic and crime expert Dorothy Mmushi. A very good afternoon to you, Dorothy. Thanks very much for your time. Well, what an interesting day it has been, but when all, or after all was said and done, MPs don't accept Paul O'Sullivan's apology. Your thoughts?
Good afternoon to you, Vuyo, and to your viewers. Yes, the MPs are really not seeing eye to eye with Paul O'Sullivan, and that is quite clear in the manner in which the proceedings of today took place. And also bearing in mind that in as much as he was trying to answer questions that were put to him today, there were numerous interruptions. There were also a sense of biasness from some of the members of parliament. I mean, he should also be treated with respect as any other witness that appears before Parliament. But clearly, given the previous history that he has had with members of Parliament, as we've seen in his previous appearances, this has clearly led to the discord amongst him and the members.
And I want to actually go there, but before we do, just to clarify one or two things. Is it or was it because of his posture? Was it because of some of the things he said, or perhaps both?
I think, Vuyo, it's a bit of both. I think Paul O'Sullivan has also given himself bad footing with the members of Parliament in that, I mean, he even previously mentioned issues in relation to a member of Parliament having debt that he hasn't paid off with the bank. So automatically now members of Parliament have this perception that he's someone who's a bully. There's even mention of him being seen as someone who's a bully. He's been seen as someone who's disrespectful of members of Parliament. So I feel all of those issues have had an impact in terms of how they have treated him as well in the commission.
Let's venture then and talk about the behavior of the members. A lot has been said about members of the committee who, as everyone knows, are all politicians from different political parties. And people have said a lot about how their behavior and attitudes often, or more often than not, actually reflects their respective vantage points as political parties, but also often some people have said that it comes across now many of them are hell-bent on really promoting or advancing their respective political parties' positions on virtually everything.
Well, Vuyo, I would agree with that sentiment, because if you see how some of the members have conducted themselves during the committee sittings, you can tell that there is a bit of political biasness. A lot of the issues that have been laid forward and things that have been asked about are based on political affiliation. They are based on them pushing a narrative that relates to the political party that they are coming from. So we have seen a lot of that coming out in today's questioning.
I mean, other people have even gone further to compare and contrast the two inquiries, the ad hoc committee and the Madlanga commission. And for many people, I mean, if the socials are anything to go by, it's chalk and cheese.
Yeah, that is true. I mean, if you look at how the questioning procedures take place at the ad hoc committee, as well as at the Madlanga Commission, there's a distinct difference in terms of how these proceedings are carried out. And I think also what we need to remember is that it's based on the different mandates that the committee has, as well as what the commission has. So you will expect that there will be a different way in that there's different objectives that they are trying to reach in terms of the proceedings that are taking place at both platforms. So it's definitely chalk and cheese.
Let's talk then a bit about what some of the things or episodes or remarks or answers to questions that Paul O'Sullivan himself gave today. Any moments that particularly outside now of whether or not the committee accepts his apology, his posture and everything that went with that. Any particular moments that stood out for you today?
For me, what stood out today was the issue of him being a certified fraud examiner, as well as whether he was indeed mandated to conduct the investigations that he's been conducting. You know, in the field of forensic investigations, there's always a thin line between a forensic investigation and a private investigation. And a lot of people tend to confuse the two. And hence, in today's proceedings, there was question on whether is he registered with the private security industry regulator, and is he practicing based on that regulatory body having given him the approval to practice as a PI. But bearing in mind that he has not been carrying out private investigation work, his work has actually been forensic investigation work. And the body that is responsible for forensic investigators in South Africa is the Association for Certified Fraud Examiners. And this regulatory professional body are the ones that would look at the conduct of forensic investigators and look at how we operate. And we need to operate under the auspices of the standards that are given by the Association for Certified Fraud Examiners. In that, for example, we need to maintain objectivity and independence, and also have a clear mandate in terms of how we do investigations. And if you look at what Paula Sullivan mentioned today, there's been quite a gray area in terms of how he got to be involved in these investigations. And that is a bit concerning, because as a forensic investigator, once you start becoming conflicted in an investigation, then you have thrown out your merits of being part of that investigation. But also bearing in mind, I think some of the things that Paula Sullivan has mentioned today have automatically been seen as lies, because there's already been questions about his credibility in terms of his qualifications, in terms of how he's entered the country. So as a forensic investigator, if your credibility is questionable, then whatever evidence that you will be producing at a later stage will obviously also be seen as questionable.
But do you think he was alive to that distinction, or was it a question of him perhaps willfully blurring the lines for whatever convenience?
I think in some of the instances he was blurring the lines, obviously because there is some things that he probably doesn't want to be established. And this I would mention based on the questions that he was asked regarding the matters that he was investigating, to say, how is it that he's always investigating high-profile cases? Who had appointed him to conduct these investigations? And I mean, if we look at, he has been involved in quite high-profile investigations. For example, the Jackie Selebi investigation, the Rodovan Crusher investigation, the Dutu Moyeni investigation, the PPE investigation for Dr. Masuku. And General Pahlani's matter. And all of these are quite high-profile matters. So one should ask, who mandated him to conduct these investigations? And was he really doing them for free? Because he's mentioned that they're a forensic company that does pro bono investigations. And now I think the reason this was done under a pro bono company is it was for them to avoid doing it under the PCRA regulations. Because if you are going to be conducting investigations for profit, then it would be required that you are registered with CRAP. But on the other hand, he then mentions that no, these were actually forensic investigations. So there was a bit of confusion in terms of the evidence that he had led today.